Tracy. Is that India? What happened to her hair? Does the way I wear my hair make me a better friend? Oh.
Welcome back to the Business Zone. This is your host, your co-host, Gilbert Buchanan, the small business paramedic, along with
Crystal Mitchell.
And you're here on the Business Zone with us. And today we talked with one of our champions, our junior champions, entrepreneur, who won the Nifty contest. She came in third place.
She came in third place.
The Nifty contest. And she's phenomenal. She came up with an app. It's called Braid It. And we're really going to make sure we work very closely with this entrepreneur, Crystal, so we can push her and provide her the support and resources she needs.
I'm so proud of all the kids that I work with the
You did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, it was fun, and I enjoy that part of my business.
Were you like a helicopter mom, hovering over there?
No, I was actually a little tougher than their moms. A couple of kids, they were trying to use the mom-child kind of negotiating.
Yeah, I think it was going to work, right?
I don't have children, so that does not work for me.
I guess they didn't know, right?
They didn't know that. So, like, oh, man. And then one day I fussed at them. They're like, oh, my God, Miss Crystal is mean. Because they weren't following and they weren't paying attention.
No, Miss Crystal is not mean. She's just a disciplinarian.
She's a little bit of a disciplinarian. So a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Nappy Wood hair expo, and I met this wonderful young lady we're going to be introducing. And she,
how did you meet her? Did she approach you? You approached her?
Actually,
you're walking by each other? How did it work?
Just waved across the room. No, I was actually moderating a panel,
okay.
And she was one of the panelists. And while we were waiting to go on air, we were Skyping with another young lady that was out of Georgia. Mm-hmm. She and I got to talking about the hair, our natural hair, and what we both do. And so really enjoyed our conversation, and so I'm so happy that she is here to speak.
That's great.
And it's actually kind of apropos. I don't know if there's a video that can queue up for that this week. Gabby Douglas, who is one of the gymnasts for the U.S., and she was doing a phenomenal job. But there was a lot of criticism.
Really?
And the criticism was about her hair.
Really?
I mean, the young lady was going through, and that would be her workplace. So I thought it was kind of appropriate when we talked to Tracy about what she does, is here this young lady is jumping on beams, flying all over the floor, hanging off of rings and parallel bars, doing things that I know I can't do, doing some amazing things for our country, and all we heard was her hair, and that was just ridiculous. So,
was her hair braided? What happened?
They felt her hair was nappy, and that it was taking away from all these amazing feats that she was doing on the balance beam, and all we could focus in was on her hair.
That
so
is
Tracy,
so ridiculous.
That's some of the area I guess we're going to talk about today. But let me read you Tracy's biography.
Okay.
Tracy Sanders is an attorney, author, and speaker in Los Angeles, California. She earned her Juris Doctor degree at Syracuse University College of Law in 2002. Her master's in public administration degree at the University of Southern Carolina in 1998, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in political science at the University of South Carolina in 95. She enjoys yoga, traveling, and volunteering, and she's particularly interested in community service initiatives to help young people achieve their education and career goals. She has made appearances on networks such as ABC, Fox, NBC, TLC, and WE. And she and I had some great conversations. She's from South Carolina, and she's from a area in South Carolina with, I guess they call the the Gullah Island.
Well, actually, thank you for having me, Crystal and Gilbert.
Welcome.
I have lived in New York City for the last decade and a half.
Okay.
But I am quick to mention that originally I grew up in South Carolina.
Okay.
So you have the Sea Islands in Georgia, and South Carolina. In South Carolina, the primary area is Columbia, Hilton Head, and Beaufort.
Okay.
My town is about an hour and a half inland. So my town is specifically called the Low Country of South Carolina. But the closer you get to Charleston, you are then in the area of the culture where we have people who are closely related to Sierra Leone and West African countries because of the culture. And that group is, and it's in some places it's considered derogatory, but I love the fact that the people in that area have embraced the culture and they are not ashamed of African descent. So in South Carolina, it's considered the Geechee culture. But if you are in the Sea Islands of Georgia, then it's Gullah. Now, some people use those terms interchangeably, but when you hear Geechee and Gullah, you know that it is the people in the Sea Islands who have a close cultural and ancestral history linked to West Africa.
Okay. Well, welcome, Tracy. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
So you want to tell us a little bit about you? I know you're from New York, Syracuse. I'm from Buffalo. So
yes. Okay. So I always claim South Carolina first.
Okay.
That's home. And then early 20s, I moved to New York, worked for a while, went to law school in upstate, and Buffalo is close to Syracuse.
It is.
So had a chance to go to law school at Syracuse. It was absolutely wonderful. After law school, I practiced employment law in Connecticut, and then I moved back to New York City, worked there for 15 years in litigation support, as well as making television appearances.
Okay.
I moved to Los Angeles about a year ago to teach at a law school, and now I am doing freelance attorney work and pursuing my passion, which is acting and writing.
Okay, and you've written a book?
Yes.
Okay. So what are the problems and concerns in wearing your natural hair?
That is a great question. So what I decided to do, I absolutely love Los Angeles. I am here to stay. And what I love about Los Angeles is the creative energy. So while working here as a freelance attorney, I thought, why not combine my legal experience to my passion and love for the natural hair movement.
Okay.
And I thought, what is missing? I noticed that you and Gilbert mentioned that there is a window of opportunity, and we need people in our community to focus on various areas and provide education and knowledge. So I thought an area where we have somewhat of a vacuum is related to natural hair and the law, right?
Yes.
So it's great to have a beautiful style, and it's very Nubian and beautiful and queen-like, but will that style impact your ability to work?
Right.
To either get hired or promoted, or it may lead to adverse employment action. So since I have a background in employment law, I thought, why not do the research, find out if hair is related to the civil rights movement, the employment laws that were created during the civil rights movement, and how that might impact us today now that natural hair is here to stay.
Right. So what were your findings?
Well, the findings are in my book, and the book is available on Amazon and Kindle, and it's entitled Natural Hair in the Workplace, What Are Your Rights? So without going through the entire book, because we don't have time, I'll provide a quick summary, because our goal is to provide knowledge and to educate the community.
Okay.
In terms of my findings, so as you may recall, we had a long and hard-fought war here in the United States. And I say war because we had a goal, and I feel we won, but we still have a lot more room to gain in terms of equal rights in the United States. That is related to the civil rights movement. Before 1964 and signing of the legislation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, African Americans were very disenfranchised in the workplace, right? You didn't have equal opportunity commission. You didn't have a right to sue if you felt you were discriminated against based on race.
Right.
So we won that battle. Now we have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Pursuant to Title VII of 1964, you have certain protected classes that are protected based on constitutional rights. One class of protection that I focus on in the book, and it is related to natural hair, is race. Okay. So an employer, and this is not every employer, so it has to be an employer that meets certain criteria, right? A certain number of employees, and there are different rules if it's a public sector employer, meaning government, versus private sector employer.
Okay.
So I don't want to paint a broad-based brush. It is federal legislation, but I would advise everyone to go to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission website and actually read the law for yourself, right? But we will provide a brief summary. So with respect to Title VII of 1964, an employer under certain conditions cannot discriminate against a person based on race. How do you think race is related to hair?
Well, if you're wearing braids or bandeau knots or sister locks or dreadlocks or any of those things, those are specific to certain cultures, to our cultures in particular. So that is kind of tied in to race.
Absolutely. So within the legislation, you can't discriminate, you meaning an employer, based on race. Now, how hair is coming into this classification, we generally identify people based on race in terms of their hair, their facial features, and other what the law calls immutable characteristics. I am born black. I love the brown skin that I'm in, unless I guess there is possibly a way, but let's focus on traditionally.
Right, exactly.
Traditionally, if you were born black, you didn't have a choice. That's immutable. Therefore, based on the law, an employer should not treat you adversely because of this immutable characteristic, which is race.
Right.
And then race encompasses your hair, your facial features, and other cultural identifiers. So that's how we're tying in race and the natural hair movement.
Okay. So are there actually some cases that are going on that pertain to employers being released of their jobs because of their hair?
Yes, unfortunately, we have had cases in the media, but I would like to circle back to what you mentioned in terms of Gabby Douglas.
Okay.
Now, I think that's a great example because when she is competing as an Olympian in the gymnastics competition, it is, in a sense, a workplace. But what's interesting about that is she's not on American soil. Right?
Exactly.
So we want to remind people that if you move to France, you can't hold up Title VII and say, I'm protected, right? So that's how it's a little bit different. Also, the workplace is going to change, and that's the beauty of the hair industry. If you're working in a certain occupation, perhaps the employer's dress code and grooming policy might not have a particular need or requirement in terms of restricting your hairstyle.
Right.
So if you're working in the creative industry, if you're a hairstylist yourself, or you're an artist, makeup artist. Think of creative work where the concern might not be client interaction or business interaction, where a certain hairstyle might be perceived as unprofessional. Okay, I know that sounds harsh, but a lot of it is based on the workplace, and that's why I love the fact that you mentioned the Olympics, because it's non-traditional.
It's a non-traditional workplace.
And in that environment, you're thinking about sports. Women are working hard to win. You're going to sweat, and all of us African-American women or women of mixed ancestry or some other cultures, for example, Jewish women, and I am not calling or naming cultures to offend anyone, but anyone who understands in certain environment, if there's moisture, if there's heat, if you have your natural texture, it's going to get puffy, or for us, we sometimes use the term nappy or kinky, and I'd love to discuss that as well. But the point I'm making is Gabby is working very hard.
Right.
She's sweating. Okay, and we know what happens to black hair if it's unpermed, unchemically treated when you're in that environment. And she's in a place where it is okay for her to be natural. It's not a beauty pageant. It's a gymnastics competition. But what I love about Gabby Douglas is she's incredibly beautiful and she's perseverant. She keeps going.
She keeps going on. And I actually noticed that because Brazil is also a tropical environment, and that there's a lot of humidity. And you're from the islands. You're from Jamaica. You know what the deal is.
Oh yeah.
And the women in Jamaica, you have to do what you need to do because you're in subtropical,
Yeah.
where there's a lot of moisture in the air, so it's going to change. I don't care whose hair, because even if you looked at the Olympics, if you had, when I wear my hair outside of braids and with curly, it don't matter. If I go to Florida, it blows out this huge, because the moisture in the air, and any curly type of textured hair does the exact same thing. So it's called entertainment with product, right? Because you're walking around with this big old huge hair.
Exactly.
So your climate has a lot to do with what goes on with our hair. And I'm one that feel hair today to me is like an accessory.
Right.
It's an expression of who you are on that day. The next day you might braid it all up and put it in a nice little French braid, and now I'm a different person. It gives you the expression as a female. And men as well today are wearing their hair in more non-traditional ways, and it's an expression of who they are as a person, I think. And so to categorize individuals based upon their hair. I mean, I understand at the workplace we need to be professional. And so being able to, knowing the difference, I think that's what it comes down, workplace etiquette, what is appropriate. And that's in anything, church, wherever you happen to go, I would think. What do you think?
I totally agree. So, for example, we mentioned Gabby Douglas. She's competing in the Olympics. It's more of sports, maybe even entertainment. So it's more creative. We would expect less controversy based on her hair or natural hair, because it's a creative space. You can contrast that to my profession as an attorney, lawyer. Very conservative profession, rightfully so. We're dealing with very important issues. People need to be able to take attorneys seriously. A lot of time people will judge your ability based on appearance, right? So I can understand the concern, if you're in a conservative work environment, to fit within the culture and to follow the employer's dress and grooming code. So if you have a professional environment such as law, which I have experienced, right? It's depending on where I'm working. So for example, in the law firm environment, there is an expectation that you are professional, you're well kept, and you're able to interact with clients in a way that's going to promote business and client development and not deter it. Now, I'm not saying that there are not women of African descent who are incredibly intelligent and they've made it all the way to the top with afros, with braids, whatever the hairstyle. But I think those women will probably agree that they had to establish first that they're intelligent, they're capable, and they probably beat out the competition.
Probably.
At a certain point, it's not necessarily a concern if you are incredible, right? But if you're just starting out as a new attorney and you're in a conservative environment, I would strongly suggest, and attorneys know, you follow the rules. That's what we are paid to do. You can contrast that to a medical environment. Now, if you are a female police officer or you're working in a public space where you're dealing with people, medical, hospital, the expectation is safety first. Okay, so if you have long braids, sister locks, dreads, if you're a female police officer, maybe the concern, maybe you're chasing an assailant and this person could attack you based on your hair. So we can't, say that it's unfair if the employer mandates that the hair is pulled up, regardless of the style. In the health profession as well, you're dealing with sanitation and safety and patients. So I'm saying all that to say this: the book is not extremist. I'm not pro don't follow the rules. I'm not advocating file Title VII claims. What I'm truly advocating is education. Know the law. Know your rights. Make a conscious decision before you accept an employment offer if you fit within that culture. If you're already employed, understand the anti-discrimination policy, but you should balance that with the dress code and grooming policy.
Because I knew you were coming on the show and we had this conversation, I did some research. And in December of 2015, the Marine Corps actually authorized that their female officers could have locks and 12 hairstyles, but they had to keep it pulled back into a ponytail. As if your hair was long, then pull it back into a bun that would be appropriate for the style of the uniform. So, if the U.S. military can embrace it, I think we can figure out workable ways. So now, as an attorney, if you were speaking to an employer, because we have many employers, and that's some of the things that we're working with, is our employers knowing what kind of policies and procedures need to be in place to address these issues so they don't get blown out of proportion, and then you have nobody has any legal standing on this is what we spoke about and this is what our dress policies are. So how would you address an employer?
And I'm very happy that you mentioned the employer aspect. I focused on the employee side because I love that you and Gilbert are advocating for new businesses and startups in our community, because unfortunately most people affected by the natural hair movement related to workplace law are going to be employees, right? So I kind of focus on where we have a need in terms of knowing the law and information, but in fairness to employers, because some of us are business owners, us meaning, African Americans or Black people, and not only Black, this is for everyone, right? Hair affects us all regardless of race.
It does. Exactly.
So I wanted to at least address the fact that employers and employees have a vested interest in knowing the law with respect to natural hair. What's amazing to me is why is it even an issue? Because for other cultures and races, natural hair isn't a big brouhaha, but for us, it's, it's an attention getter. Right. And I say that because going through some of the cases, the concerns and the language in the case law from the employer's perspective is some of the Black hairstyles, particularly the women, were distracting.
Okay.
Too much attention.
Okay.
Unprofessional. And it's like automatically if you see an afro or braids or something that is ethnically connected to African American culture, there is a bias.
Yeah.
And there is a negative bias. So what I would advise employers to do is first provide cultural sensitivity training as a part of orientation, because the workplace is becoming more diverse. And some people do not interact with other cultures and communities except for the workplace, right?
Right, exactly.
So if you are not accustomed to braids and afros, if this is very foreign to you, and unfortunately, our culture and hairstyles included are very foreign to some people. You also have to understand that if you're in a workplace such as LA and New York, you're interacting with people from around the world.
Right.
If you have employees who did not have any contact with African Americans before coming to the melting pot of the United States, it would be a great idea to provide cultural sensitivity training. Not in terms of signaling us out as victims, but hey, these are people all over the world. These are different practices. When we come together in the workplace, we share a common space and we should respect each other. So you're doing that without necessarily interjecting the law, because the law can appear to be rather intimidating, but you're starting off from the vantage point of common courtesy and mutual respect. So I would say that would be the first suggestion. And the second suggestion, every employer, whether you're large or small, you should have an employment law attorney on speed dial.
Sure.
You should not wait until there is an incident filed in HR in terms of any type of workplace issues, whether it's related to race, hair, anything.
Right.
You should be proactive in terms of how do I manage and optimize my human capital, which is the greatest resource that any business
for sure
might have,
exactly.
Right? So I would say you should definitely have an employment law attorney when you're starting your business, while you are maintaining your business and growing your business. And with your employment law attorney, you want to discuss diversity in the workplace. You want to discuss how can I avoid complaints, right? How can I avoid lawsuits? How can I keep my company in good standing? Because guess what? Complaints and lawsuits affect the goodwill of your business.
Right.
So you want to spend that money on the front end and not wait for something bad to happen.
Right.
Yeah, on the back end. And that's something that we've talked about is creating those teams that when you start a business, even as an ongoing business, you need to have a good CPA. You have to have your employment law law attorney, you obviously need your corporate attorneys, and because that's two different areas, right?
Yeah,
of
so
expertise.
corporate, and that's a great point, Crystal, because corporate, you need to have someone who can help you with your corporation, LLC paperwork, if you're LLC, or even doing things in terms of expanding. Maybe you want a different business form. So your corporate attorney is going to work closely with you, and if you're in the state of California, perhaps issues related to filing with the Secretary of State in California, anything with your corporate business form and the entity itself. But the employment lawyer is going to focus on Title VII, which is federal employment law, or state employment law. And those two areas are different. State employment law and federal law have commonalities, but your attorney would be able to help you understand both. Because it is based on where your business is located, you would need to know both state and federal law.
And actually, they would have more interaction with you as an employment law attorney than they probably would with their corporation, because especially if you're hiring employees, then you need to be able to have exactly on speed dial, because wow, today. There's so many different people are just so different, and cultures are different, and the trends are different, and sometimes meshing that together in a workplace environment is tough. A lot of companies nowadays don't have HRs on premise anymore. They outsource that. Right. So I have one of my best friends and another business partner of mine. She had been in HR for. I want to say she's been in the 28, 30 years. That's what she does. And she has always worked for service-based. She worked for the airlines for 20-something years. And now she subcontracts, and she does it with a lot of manufacturing companies. And we have those conversations about what's law, what's legal, and how the employers are handling certain situations. And you're like, ooh, that's a sticky area right there. Yes. And, by being a bookkeeper and accounting, that crosses over for me because I do payroll. So there's a lot. I've had some clients that had some very interesting payroll situations that crossed over into the legal area. And so that's a big area, especially in Southern California, because, we have some very interesting California labor laws.
Yes.
And so you, an attorney that specializes in employee law, is very important into running a business that you want to stay in business.
Exactly, and avoid negative publicity.
Publicity. And when you're employees, Gilbert, you would say this, I think, and you work with a lot of larger companies, that employer-employee relationship can make or break your business.
It can. And as a matter of fact, that's part of your branding.
It is.
So a good relationship is a part of your branding. A bad relationship is a part of your branding. So however which side you slice it on, it's still your branding, and you got to protect that, because the last thing you want to be known in the community as someone who does that. They discriminate, or they are unfair, or they're biased against someone for certain things. So it's the last thing you want. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back.
Right. And if you have any questions, please call Attorney Sanders. Would love to answer any questions. It's 323-293-3375.
And you're on the Business Zone.
Yes.